Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Career Hotline. On today's episode, I have my friend Jules. She is an incredible Lagree instructor. I've been taking her class for a while now, and she's been such a great person, coach. She's intelligent as well. And I'm so glad she came here on this podcast today. And I cannot wait to tell you what Lagree is, what the difference between Lagree and Pilates, and also talk about forms and some culture and career investments that you could make in this industry. So let's get started. Jules, can you please introduce yourself? Tell us about how long you've been in this industry, your background, tell us
Yeah,
everything.
definitely. Well, also thanks for saying that, Bo. I really appreciate it. I love having you in my class. I think one of the coolest parts about being a Lagree instructor is definitely the clients and the students, the people you get to meet across the board. I've only been a Lagree instructor for about 2 years. I want to say that roughly I started taking classes sometime in 2022. I was living in Maui, and at that time, I've always been like a big lover of yoga, but I was doing fitness workouts at home just to stay healthy during the pandemic and as I was traveling, because I used to travel a lot. And when I heard about Lagree, I saw an ad for it just walking by the studio, and it was this woman on a Megaformer. So it's like a reformer, kind of like you would use in Pilates, but different. And I was like, okay, that looks like new Pilates. Is that what this is? And I think that's what a lot of people think going into it. It is derived from some of the methods of Pilates, but Lagree is its entire own set of structure and rules. So a lot of times I'll say it's like Pilates, but it's very slow. And while Pilates is supposed to be more therapeutic and low impact, Lagree is still low impact, but extremely high intensity.
Mhm.
So those are the big differences. And I think it's like one of those things that you definitely get the difference of if you've ever done both. But one thing about Lagree too is that like it's always evolving and changing, and I'm someone who really likes to change a lot in my career and to learn a bunch. So I think that's one of the reasons why I've stuck with it and ended up teaching it.
You have an incredible background. Walk us through when you graduated college.
That's a great starting point. So, graduating college, I graduated from Stanford University in 2018. I was an urban studies major. And I guess a little bit before graduation in 2018, I had so many interests. I had no idea if I wanted to be an international relations major, computer science, product design, or art. So I ended up taking a lot of these different classes and basically molding them around my love for exploring cities and traveling. Because in those days, I was kind of bummed, honestly, that I didn't choose to take a gap year. So I'd watch a lot of these YouTube videos of people traveling, and I blogged a lot for myself and for Stanford. So that was kind of my hobby at the time. And I got into graphic design. So I think after I graduated from Stanford in 2018, my first job out of school was in the Bay Area. I was a contract recruiting coordinator for Google. So
Mhm.
basically, if you ever get hired at one of these tech companies, there's someone who basically makes your whole schedule and adds all the calendar appointments to the people who interview you. And that's what I was doing. I lasted like 3 months in that job because it was really intense. Like
Yeah.
our success metrics were based upon like having 250 candidates scheduled each week. And it was a lot of moving parts that I just didn't really see myself growing in. So I decided
Mhm.
to move back home. I pivoted, and in 9 months, I decided to move to New York. I got a couple of jobs in the restaurant industry. I was freelancing in design still because I managed to start doing that even while I was a student. And I went to Shillington, which was a part-time graphic design program. And this was now around 2019. And going into 2020, the pandemic started in New York. And I couldn't work my restaurant jobs anymore. So, but thankfully, a lot of work at that time went online. And so I started doing graphic design full time. Um, and this was not easy. I did not sleep a lot, but there was a ton of work at the time because everyone needed to figure out how to run their business online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then a few more jumps until Lagree, but I ended up working for a social media agency based in LA. And like many people, I spent a lot of time with my family in Las Vegas in 2020. And I think like my 9 month working that agency job, I was really ready to travel again, or at least get out of the house. And I spent some time in New York with one of my roommates from college, and she had mentioned that a friend was renting out a room in Hawaii. So I went to Hawaii and ended up staying there for 3 years. Yeah.
So just to summarize your career path, you graduated from Stanford, which is a huge accomplishment, by the way.
Thanks.
And
Yeah.
you immediately went into the corporate world for a few months and another corporate job. It sounded like you didn't really had time to be with yourself and figure out what does Jules want to do, correct? Because you were always in school or work.
I think that's a good way of putting it because the
Mm-hmm.
process of getting to Stanford is not an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
I think many people are aware of that, but I think for me especially, I had no one in my family or in my life who had previously gone to Stanford. So, but I had the internet, and I think similar to you, I actually really love video games and I spent a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time on game forums as a kid. But I think what that did was it taught me how to research. And, I loved blogging because a lot of people would talk about their experiences online. And I think from a young age, I kind of used that as a way to gather like information and data and kind of like figure out, okay, well, piece together. It's kind of like almost like a game plan or a cheat code in a way where, okay, it's like these are the steps to get to this place. But rather than like a video game, this is real life. And I just
Right.
kind of like used all my time in order
Mm-hmm.
to make that happen.
Yeah. So you kind of planned out your career path in the same way that you planned out the games forums,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. And my parents worked a lot as a kid. So I had like
Mm-hmm.
unfettered access to the internet and maybe sometimes like a little too much. Like I'd be online like until 3 a.m. and then like wake up at 6 a.m. as like a 12-year-old. And,
That's as
yeah,
a 12-year-old, that's completely normal.
I think a lot of people probably do that and maybe have similar experiences, but it's not exactly what I would recommend, but
Mm-hmm.
that is
Yeah,
what
but
I
you
did.
you were
Hmm.
on there actually being productive. Like you were planning out your life. I remember you told me that you were like 14 and you had what was it? Like you had your life planned out. You're doing like your career path at such a young age, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I didn't really realize I was doing that. I think I just really knew nothing about the world, and I was homeschooled growing up, so I was relatively sheltered.
Mm-hmm.
And although I went to high school in Las Vegas, I was homeschooled in Oregon for a really long time. And so I was just trying to understand humans and like social
Yeah.
dynamics and like what was going on in the world outside of like my little bubble. So I think from the safety of that perspective, I kind of like put together this dream life, like manifesting as it were before like that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
At the age of 14.
yeah, and I think like it's actually like a really great time to do that because you don't
Mm-hmm.
know what you don't know, but also it kind of helps you not to think about maybe the things that stop people from pursuing
Yeah.
a path.
Let's jump forward to when you saw the Lagree studio. What did you do after that?
So at the time, I started out as a client,
Mm-hmm.
and I think at this time when I found the Lagree studio, I was still working remote. So after I had worked at this social media marketing agency, I didn't work for 2 years, but I knew I needed a job, and I ended up working as a product designer for an AI startup.
Mhm.
And that was a great job for me to land in 2022 now. So end of 2022. But I was working crazy hours, midnight Hawaiian Standard Time,
Mm.
calls, sometimes waking up at 5 a.m. to get on calls with people. And then my
Jeez.
team was like all over the world. They were like in Australia, China, Menlo Park. And then sometimes I would travel to the Bay Area from Maui. And so
Mhm.
I'm so familiar with that United Airlines flight from like OGG's airport in Maui all the way over to San Francisco. And
Mhm.
it's actually not bad. It's 8 hours though, and I kind of ruined my back doing that. So I guess long story short was I was not maintaining that same routine I had 2 years prior in the pandemic, like doing my little workout videos, but I was really disciplined and on top of it. I think it was just kind of my way of dealing with stress back then, um, where I would do like a 15-minute like leg or core routine if I was feeling stressed. Um, and I was feeling stressed a lot. So
You were working from 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. So, of course, you didn't have any work life balance.
yes, and I think while I felt stressed in my other marketing job prior to this, an AI startup is a different beast. And I think this is also a time too where I would get notifications on like 7 different apps and like people would always be calling me and there wasn't time to like do my actual work. So that was like my
Mm.
frustration with that particular setup.
But you were a client at the Lagree studio.
hmm
How many classes did you take until you realized, like, oh, I love this and I want to actually invest my time and career into this?
I was not the perfect degree student. And I
Mm-hmm.
know this now because I'm an instructor and I think there's certain expectations when it comes to being consistent, arriving to class on time, like, knowing what you're doing with form. I had done bar and yoga before,
Mm-hmm.
and I did a lot of that, I think, even prior to Lagree, but I think I was a client for a year
Yeah.
before I decided to do an instructor training. And to be honest, I still didn't really know what I was doing even after like 20 Lagree classes. And I think it was actually because I can confidently say this now as an instructor. I feel like I always try to be the type of instructor new people to Lagree need because I didn't have it. Like
Mm-hmm.
my Lagree instructors wanted to teach to the most advanced people in the room, and there were a ton of them. So, and that is kind of what we're told sometimes. And I think there's a place for that, but I also think that you should still be able to catch people who are newer up to speed. But I don't really think there was any desire or incentive for my instructors to do that. But I would still come and show up because I needed it that badly for my mental
Yeah.
health and socialization.
Let's talk about the difference between Lagree and Pilates.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of people are going to be confused right now.
Yeah. Okay. So the difference between Lagree and Pilates. So Pilates was founded by Joseph Pilates sometime after World War II, like in the 1940s. And it was a method he used to rehab like World War II soldiers. So imagine like having a bullet wound and then recovering and what kind of workout you need. Probably something that like moves your muscles and helps you recover. Lagree was created probably somewhere closer to like the early 2010s
Mm-hmm.
by Sebastian Lagree in Los Angeles. And Sebastian is a man who is still living today and he has patented new machines. The traditional Pilates reformer is literally made out of bed springs that I think Joseph Pilates took from like a hospital bed. And then the Lagree machines are still use springs, but there's different types of springs. Some have like heavier tension, some are lighter. And it typically has like a lot more accessories, especially the Mega Pro, which is what I teach on, which is kind of like, it's what it sounds like. It's kind of like an iPhone where every few years there'll be a new machine that comes out and a new set
Oh,
of moves
I didn't know
and
that.
methodology. Yeah. Like in class, I I teach like a certain way, but if you took class from me in October, the way I teach now is even different. We're going towards a model that is more time under tension. So we have fewer moves. You might even do like 3 leg moves in a class, and you work one side of your body first. So you don't switch between like the right leg and the left leg. You do all right leg, then all left leg, then maybe some arm moves that are either bilateral where you're using both of your hands, or single arm moves, which are not even recommended by the official Lagree Academy. So that's a thing too that I think I learned as an instructor. There's this whole culture of, I think, teaching, but there's a culture of instructors learning and this method evolving, and we're like kind of a part of it in real time.
I do like that, how it's always evolving, because we're gonna constantly find better ways to do a certain move or exercise, or we're with science too. You're gonna know like maybe time under tension is better than repetition.
Yeah, I think to your point on that, like one thing I will explain is we always tell clients to go slowly. Less reps in a lunge is better
Hmm.
than like really powering through, speeding through it. And I think it kind of throws the traditional idea of working out on its head, where you could totally go to the gym and do that, but it's not necessarily efficient, and it's not necessarily low impact or
Hmm.
healthy.
Just to summarize that, everyone, what Jules said, and this is what I think why I love Lagree versus like working out at the gym. You are working one side of your body until you're done, and then you switch to the other side. Whereas, like at the gym, you're doing left bicep, right bicep. That's one set, and then you do another set.
Maybe you go on your phone in between, and
Yeah,
you end up spending 2 hours there. The other thing
exactly.
about Lagree too is like it's a quick workout. You're going slow, but the
Mhm.
transitions are quick, and you're done in 45 minutes.
I love the 45 minutes. Have you ever injured yourself on the Megaformer?
Great question. You know, I haven't, but you definitely can. I think that's why it's so important to go slow, because if you don't know what you're doing on the machine or listening to the cues, it's really easy
Mhm.
to just like very quickly do something you're not supposed to do. But I would say like my most common injury just from teaching is actually sometimes I'll like bruise myself on the machine. I'll like kick a machine just walking
Oh.
around class. So I
Yeah.
always have these bruises on my legs, but not from like doing the workout.
The key move there is to go slow for everyone that's listening.
Yeah, and to ask questions too. I think sometimes we think about group fitness classes as someone tells you what to do and you do it exactly, but it can be a bit more collaborative if you just kind of let your instructor know what you're working with, you
And
know?
speaking of that,
Yeah.
um, I know I can relate to this, but maybe some people are afraid to like ask for help. Let's say if someone is in class and they're confused, do you say like raise your hand or like make eye contact? What would you say to someone that's confused and they're afraid to speak up?
A lot of times you can tell because there are
Yeah.
just these scared looks.
Yeah.
Especially, I know who the new students are and I know who knows what they're doing. And it's nice to have a mix of both in class, because the more seasoned students can be a great example. And then the newer students, I really love it when they come early and I can ask them what they do know and what they don't.
Hmm.
But honestly, more commonly, I think new students tend to sneak in the door like 5 minutes after class starts.
Oh,
And then honestly, we just have to do our best to work together, me and the student. Like I'll
yeah.
cue things really slowly or tell the more advanced people what progressions they should take.
Yeah.
But I think one thing I'm really not afraid of too is providing a way to alter the moves, not so that it's necessarily easier, but it's doable for someone who has not taken any classes before.
So you'd say a good instructor would essentially know if the student needs help, like they should
Definitely.
be.
I feel like the best instructors are present physically, but also visually watching
Yeah.
and then correcting people's form as
Hmm.
they fall out of it.
Do you have any icks during class? Something that bothers you?
Yeah, actually, I didn't think about this before, but on the new Mega Pros, there's a panel, and sometimes like the panel just starts clicking a lot, like in class. Like there's some people who just like keep on lifting it, and
Yes.
I have to like turn the music up so I don't hear it. But genuinely, I don't think I get many icks. Also, maybe this is just me, but I think people who blatantly try to ignore the instructor give me the ick for real. But
People do that?
sometimes, yeah, some people come in and they just want to experience a group workout, but
Oh,
and I get that if you're doing something like yoga or bar where you're on the floor,
yeah.
but for a method like Lagree, I think
Mhm.
listening and observing the instructor is absolutely a part of the class.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that people have injuries, right? So they're going to do some moves differently because of that. But you're saying that people just do completely like different workout. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like very clear they're not listening to the cues,
Oh,
or I'll
wow.
come over and
Mm-hmm.
like off the mic, because we're, you know, we have our little headset
Mic'd up.
on, we're
Mm-hmm.
mic'd up. I'll take the mic away and I'll ask them like, are you modifying? Are you good? Like what's happening here? Just so
Yeah.
I get a sense of
Mm-hmm.
what's going on, and then I'll try to offer them something a little bit different, because there are some moves where there's a core muscle group we're trying to work out, but based upon their body movement, they're definitely not getting any engagement there.
Right.
So I think that's just something I try to like keep on task, because there is like a certain reason why we do moves back to back. Yeah, so it is just kind of funny. It's like I get it.
I didn't know that people do that, especially like if you're paying for a class. Why not do the class, you know?
Yeah, but it happens maybe like one
Okay, it's
person every two classes.
yeah.
Mhm.
Do you ever feel pressure to be super on when you're exhausted or dealing with your own stuff?
I think that happens like probably more often than people realize. Like Lagree instructors definitely have personal things going on too. Like we deal with the very similar life circumstances as everyone does. But I think another thing I've learned is I'm not the type of instructor that is really peppy all the time. Like I can be. There are some classes where my delivery is very high energy. But one thing I've loved about teaching at this studio in Eagle for so long, like even since October, I've developed certain relationships with clients where I think my authenticity is not necessarily having a really pumped up personality.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my music and the moves, it's the cueing. Yeah. And then like I'll let people tell me too if they're feeling a certain way before class, just so I know to account for that. Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to, like, there's a difference between being uncomfortable because something is hard, that's good. And there's a difference between like some people are actually really good at like persisting through moves, even though they're feeling pain. That's not good for them. Not everyone has that awareness yet. So, um, and I don't if you don't tell me. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I try to like establish a good connection where people can tell me.
I think that's important for people to know is that your instructors are human at the end of the day. Like if you ever had hard days, they've had hard days too, and just be open-minded. Well, let's talk about forms. I think this is another very important conversation when it comes to Lagree. It's all about the forms. If you do it wrong, it could lead to, injuries long term. So let's talk about it. What are some common form mistakes you see in Lagree classes?
I think the way I might discuss this is that a Lagree class, I'll tell you how a Lagree class is like typically broken up, or at least how I write one, and then common mistakes I see in each area. So a very standard Lagree class I write starts out with center core, so that is like your abs, your glutes, lats, and then we go into legs, arms, and then there's usually a core finisher. In core, a very standard move in Lagree is a wheelbarrow. And it's kind of like when you're doing an ab wheel, you're holding on to um, the rails of the machine, and then you're pressing your arms out and going forward. But one of the limits of looking at your form in the mirror is that if you are bending at the hips and other people are keeping their arms straight, it looks the same, like as you're facing the mirror. So
Yeah.
you're not supposed to bend your
Can't
hips
tell.
in the wheelbarrow like at all. You're like in a plank position. Your body is like in one line, but what people want
Yeah.
to do is bend from the hips, like a right angle. And so they do
Yes.
this move, but it's supposed to be like this, and then your arms are what kind of like make the carriage go out. So your body is never
Mm.
moving. So there's that one. And to be fair, Lagree has a lot of really Lagree specific complex moves that you just wouldn't know how to do unless you've been to a class before.
I think the most common one that people would hear a lot is engage your core.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's talk about that because I've heard that there's many ways to engage your core wrong.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people now say like tuck your tailbone instead of engaging your core. Do you have any insight that you can share with that?
Yeah, that's also such a controversial one
Mm-hmm.
because we started saying tuck your tailbone because that was something that they mentioned in a recent training.
Mm-hmm.
I think that works for some people because it kind of means like in certain plank positions, what you're trying to do is activate the glutes and kind of tilt your pelvis up to your rib cage. And what that does, I think for some people, is have that effect of like bringing your belly button into your spine, which is what I used to
Yeah.
cue. And some people will say, like brace like you're preparing for a punch in the gut, like you're boxing or
Uh-huh.
something.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the engagement you want. It's like you want to breathe, inhaling and exhaling, but you're inhaling and then exhaling, like really squeezing the core. And I think one thing that we typically miss when we're cueing core activations um, is the breathing aspect, because some people don't breathe when
Oh
they're
no.
doing that whole like, oh, like I need to suck it in, like I'm putting on a pair of jeans or something.
Yeah. If people don't engage the core, do you think that they're not working out, essentially?
I think in the core moves, you might actually you could potentially injure your lower back.
Yeah.
Um, the thing is, I've had some back issues over the past couple of years,
Mhm.
and I'm working through them. I'm pretty good now, but my spine was pretty misaligned just from sitting down a lot in my remote work jobs. And a part of that was tight hip flexors. Like your psoas will shorten as you sit down long hours. And what that does is it pulls on your lower back muscles. And then so your
Mm.
lower back is kind of like, I like to think of it as like a core sandwich. So you have like your back, but then you have your spine, and then the abs, like the six pack we typically think about. But the psoas kind of wraps from the front to the back. So if you're kind of not engaging that lower core and that area below your rib cage all the way up to your diaphragm, what happens is like you can get little spine misalignments. Or if you already
Mhm.
have them, it's like you're not strengthening the muscles that would make your posture better. It depends where your baseline is, but I try to correct those just to kind of help people go in the right direction.
Getting corrected, it's probably because you could potentially injure yourself.
One thing that's really cool about the Lagree method, and particularly the way we run it at our studio, is we bring in other professionals. We had Dr. Valerie Levesque come in, who is um, a doctor of physical therapy. And um, I don't know if you've ever done physical therapy, but she gave me some sessions to work on my hips. But a lot of it was just actually like micro muscle movements, going really slow. It's basically what we do in Lagree. And I think after I did that workshop with her, it changed my perspective on some of the moves that we do in class. It's Everyone wants to work out for the aesthetic, to get like the abs, the ass, to like achieve
Yeah.
whatever it is that some sort of ideal. But
Mhm.
also realistically, I love to teach these classes because the difference of being healthier and toning certain muscles is kind of like a life changing feeling. It is like feeling well and
Yeah.
feeling like better in your body. I think along with some of those like aesthetic cues sometimes, like, oh yeah, you want to squeeze your core because, like that's why we're here. It's like, yeah, like it's going to help your spine feel a lot better. We're
Right.
going
There's
to
more
be
than the
able,
aesthetic purpose.
Yeah, or like if you want to challenge yourself eventually, it's like there are more challenging things we can do, but this is the first step to get there.
Mhm.
And we need
Yes.
the foundations.
How can you tell someone is doing a move correctly on the Megaform if it just hurts everywhere?
Yeah, a lot of people will tell me this sometimes actually after their first few classes. They'll say, I'm still really sore from my last class I took, or it feels like my muscles are pulling in this area. And so keep in mind, I'm not a doctor, but I do know some things about the sensations of pain. And I think when you're first starting to work out within a very intense method, I think you need to give yourself at least 2 to 3 days of a break. You
Yeah,
also have to make sure you're
definitely.
hydrated because your muscles
Mhm.
are going to probably pull more if you're not. And then, just realistically speaking, this is something that the PT told me, but if your muscles feel spicy or they're kind of like, if it feels a bit like
Burn?
it's burning, it's
Yep.
because the muscle is weak. And so you're actually strengthening it. And that's like very humbling to realize because I feel that all the time. But the thing is, like, even though it's uncomfortable, you are strengthening it, unless
Mhm.
the sensation is more like tearing, which
Yeah.
personally I've never felt, but I know some people do. So
Yeah, I wonder what that feels like.
I
If
imagine you
anyone
probably can't
knows.
even move through it. That's kind of
Right.
what I'm
Okay,
thinking.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I
if
think if you're
you
moving,
mhm.
the other thing too is moving slow is really complex. And we don't typically do that in daily life. And so Lagree is one of the few workouts that challenges slow twitch muscle fibers over time. And we stay in some moves for like 3 minutes at a time. And so if I ever get a beginner, I just know that they're not going to be able to move very slowly at all, probably. And so what I recommend is a hold, and then
Mhm.
several different variations of a hold, so that they can start to strengthen that muscle instead of maybe moving slowly through bad form.
Yeah, a
Mm-hmm.
hold. So if you're a beginner and you're having difficulty in class, going slow, like Jules says, try to do a hold instead. And maybe one day you can start to go slower. That leads me to the next conversation. Lagree shakes. What are Lagree shakes? Why is it so important? Can you please talk about it?
Yes. So when you take a Lagree class, there's this phenomenon where if you're moving slowly and you're challenging yourself, your muscles start to shake. And it's pretty unusual and bizarre. If you've ever done a really hard workout and then tried to like lift furniture the next day, you might notice that your muscles will shake. But a lot of people experience that type of shake during a Lagree workout because of the tension, the duration, and just how slow the movements are. And so that is your slow twitch muscle fibers. They are literally twitching as you are going slowly. There's probably, I think, more science and personal body science behind like why some people shake more than others. But I think my opinion is that if you're typically doing more Lagree workouts, you might be more fatigued, and then that shake comes in sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And shakes are okay,
They are
right?
okay. And I think that they're actually kind of like a sign that you are pushing your muscles to the max. And as long as you can keep your form, it's not bad for you. It feels intense, but it's relatively safe.
Yeah.
Hmm.
As someone new, and I think I've been doing this for maybe 6 months, a little more, uh, it was scary at first to experience that during class. And I hope that a lot of people can probably relate to this. You're going to class, you're shaking, and you're like, I'm going to stop. This is weird. But it's actually okay. And that's what Legree recommends that you do. So don't be afraid to shake in class. It's not embarrassing. It's actually good.
Yeah, I like you bringing in your perspective too, because I remember when I first took a Lagree class and I found that shake, I was like, whoa, am I just like really weak right now? And it really doesn't mean that at all. It it's like you're really pushing yourself. That's honestly how I see it.
Let's talk about the Legree culture and the career.
Mhm.
You work at how many studios now, Jules?
I've only ever worked at two,
Okay.
and so my current studio is my second one.
Do you do it full-time, part-time?
I would still call myself a part-time instructor because
Mhm.
I do other types of work outside of Lagree.
Right.
However, I sometimes teach up to 20 classes a week. I will
Mhm.
not say that is sustainable week to week. And a lot of people who I see try to do that typically experience some sort of burnout
Yeah.
because it's such a focused method. I think that you, can rely on your team and have people cover for you. And that's the nice thing about having a studio with classes that are available at all times of the day. If you are relatively flexible, one thing that ends up happening is there are some months where I'm teaching quite a bit. And then there are months like this month for June, for example, I'm teaching maybe 5 classes a week, which is definitely a lot less than I was doing the past 3 months.
Would you like to talk about the hourly rate a person that is starting out would make?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the studio. But I think honestly, Lagree as a method for me at my current studio pays 35 an hour baseline. And then depending on the amount of students we have in class, a full class, for example, 15 people, you will receive a $49 an hour rate. And it's also different depending on privates. Privates typically get paid more per hour. And at my other studio that I worked at in Hawaii, the hourly rate was 45 an hour regardless. So I do
That's really
like
good.
the baseline of, guaranteed pay and then more pay per
Mhm.
client because it is definitely a more challenging experience teaching a lot of students.
Do you get any benefits though? Obviously, because you work part-time, so I'm gonna guess no, you don't get any benefits. Is that correct?
Yes. So not in
Mhm.
the traditional sense of benefits that you would get from a part-time job.
Mhm.
Um, but one thing I should add though is that we do get benefits. We get a free membership. Like I have unlimited classes. And if you look up the average monthly package for a Lagree studio, our studio, for example, it's somewhere around like 300 for 16 classes. We don't even offer unlimited because that's not something we recommend for our clients.
Mhm.
But even some other studios that offer unlimited, it is like in that 350 price range.
I feel like a lot of people know that Lagree is not something cheap. It's not a gym membership. You're not going to pay $20, $30 a month. Be aware of that if that's something you're interested in.
It's definitely a premium service. That's like
Mhm.
how I would label it. And the cool thing that we do at our studio too is that we've partnered with a few small businesses in town, like FedUp, which is a meal kit service, and I get 20% off through them.
That's
So do
amazing.
my clients as well. So if you were ever interested in trying that, though.
Mhm.
And then we also work with a women's hormone and health clinic, and we get a discount through them as well. And I
Oh.
think we're only in the first year of operating, and it's really cool to see all these other businesses that are kind of non-traditional but definitely women's health oriented that we're partnering with, and I think that kind of makes it even more interesting to be a part of the community.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
incredible. I mean, just alone getting a free membership is such a huge perk when you are an instructor. That saves a lot of money. And having extra benefits with small businesses too is even better. And also the flexibility, right? Are you choosing your own schedule or is it kind of predetermined for you? How does that normally work?
It's extremely negotiable, and I take on a lot more classes through substituting, but the way it works is people typically have their set class times, and if they need coverage, let's say that someone's daughter's has like a dance recital,
Yeah.
then people are usually willing to substitute for them.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's super flexible.
That's nice. Have you been in a studio that was a little too culty? Maybe not worked, but like have you worked out at one?
This is a great question. And yes, but I will say it wasn't a Lagree studio. So I've done lots of culty different forms of fitness,
Yes.
and I love some of
Culty
them.
forms.
but others I don't. So that's kind of like the interesting thing to me because I don't know about you. Like, I'd love to ask you this question because
Yeah.
I know you do other types of workouts too, and so do I. Like, Lagree isn't the only thing out there. It's just like special in its own way, but I still love to do other types of workouts and I love fitness trends. Whatever gets your body moving. But one thing that I cannot stand is like if the music is so loud and it's so dark that it becomes like a health issue. I'm like, what am I doing? And like I can't
Yes.
hear anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done a studio like that. I think it depends on the workout. Uh I did cycle bar and it
Mm,
is like that. It's dark and the music's going, but you're also riding a bike, so I actually need that. I'm not gonna ride a bike to Lana Del Rey.
that's true. You're
Going,
and you're locked in there, right? Like you're
yes,
clipped in.
yes.
So,
So with Lagree, I did go to a class that was dark and the music was upbeat. I felt like it didn't quite fit into the moves that we're doing. I love having like a little more a slower music, but there are
mm,
days. I think there was
mm-hmm.
one class where it was Jen's class. She was playing all like club music, and I was like, "Wait, this is kind of fun, Jen."
Yeah, yeah. I love a little bit of both. Sometimes
Hmm.
people move a little too fast
Yeah,
if they're
it
newer.
is confusing though because you
Hmm.
want to move fast if the music is like jamming.
But it's also nice because a lot of EDM and house music is at like 120 beats per minute, which is
Oh,
a good cardio rate, especially for something that's a bit slower. It's like the pace your heart will beat when you're fast walking. And then there's also 4 counts, which is what we need for like the timing. So sometimes like I'll count to the beat of the music if I'm trying to put you in your next move.
are you
Yeah.
making your own playlists?
Yes, I do. I
Oh.
personally do, and I think a lot of instructors will.
Mhm,
I used to use other people's playlists that I would just find,
mhm.
but I ended up really not liking that because there's some songs I just don't like, and then I
Yeah.
started acting kind of weird. But it's not because of the
Mhm.
students. It's like I don't like that song,
Yeah.
So if I like the music, everyone has a better experience, I think.
Oh. I always thought I don't know why, I thought that it's just something, like, preset. I didn't realize that you're actually making your personal playlists.
Yeah, there's a lot involved, I think, behind the scenes. Like a lot of instructors we write our own classes, we plan our classes beforehand, and sometimes the music matches. Some days it
Yeah.
doesn't, Like I've had music issues at times where I've learned to basically not allow any explicit content on my Spotify settings because it's
Yeah.
the safest route.
Yeah.
And because the
Mhm.
worst thing that happens is you have a little old grandmas in the class, and then
Mhm.
suddenly, like, the most recent, like, hip hop comes on.
And it's awkward.
Yeah, it's not what the crowd wants. It's just off.
Actually, I was gonna ask you this next question, but I think we just answered it. The question was, what's something that only great instructors do, but clients may not notice? And I think that definitely is like if you have great music and it goes with the flow, you're also planning out the workouts. So, do you have anything else to add to that? What are some things that great instructors do?
Yes, I do. Like, those are all great traits, but I also think great instructors are collaborative with other instructors. And I
Mhm.
think they also understand the team dynamic of how a studio works. Because I think in my short time as a boutique fitness instructor and having seen like a lot of different studios and how certain teams interact and certain management, sometimes it can get a little bit unprofessional. But I think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, while we are building communities, we're also building businesses. And, there are some communities out there that I think maybe aren't actually the most supportive. Maybe they can be a bit more toxic. And I think
Yeah.
the same is true for like business culture. And it's
Yeah.
nice when we can, I guess, have some level of collaboration and self examination to at least trend towards um, accountability and like work towards that type of progress we want to see.
Yes. Yeah, you're all working together for your studio or your clients, and it doesn't feel like you're trying to compete with each other.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that at my studio at all. But there are definitely a lot of people I hear who work at studios like that, and not specifically in the Lagree community, but I've also worked at non-Lagree studios like that. And it didn't last very long. So I think that's just kind of
Yeah.
a testament to
Mhm.
what that culture does.
Yeah. And I'm sure as like a client, you would probably be able to tell too if the environment is good.
I think a lot of clients who hang around eventually kind of hear the tea of like what's happening behind the scenes, where they can
Mhm.
tell, and it's not a good look,
Yeah.
once that starts to show. Hmm.
Let's do some rapid fire round of questions. What's your least favorite Legree move?
Fifth lunge.
What was that?
Fifth lunge. It's a lunge where you're at the
Mhm.
back of the machine
Yeah.
and you're pulling against tension, and it's just
Ooh.
like really unstable. I don't love doing it. I don't love teaching
Mhm.
it because it's such a tricky one.
That sounds incredibly hard.
Yeah,
Anything on the back of the machine
see, like I never run
is
it. That's
hard.
why you're like, what's that?
Yeah, I'm like, what's that? That's not.
Hmm.
Hmm. Playlist vibe. I know we talked about music, but what vibe do you like?
Um, Definitely some like beachy tech house
Mm.
music.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, something kind of jazzy. I like to do it all, but also like
Yes.
90s pop.
Oh, yes. Those are good. Who would you love to train on the Megaformer? Could be a celebrity or an influencer.
I think Hayley Williams of
Haley Williams.
Paramore. I
Oh,
feel like a pop punk artist would be like really fun to like teach on the
yes.
Megaformer, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. I thought about that once because I was trying to curate a playlist for a pop punk themed class. Yeah.
Oh, wait, that would be so fun.
Hmm.
What's your wellness ick? Something that gives you the cringe.
I think people who like are too strict or perfectionist with any sort of wellness routine and then impose it on other people as if like this is like gospel. That
Yeah.
is a big ick for me.
Mm-hmm. Me too. That wraps up our rapid fire round. Let's close this out with any advice you want to give to upcoming degree instructor. What's one thing that they should know when they jump in, before they jump in?
Yes. Before you become a Lagree instructor, I think it's important to recognize that there is a fee for the certification. You can find this information online depending on the studio you take it with, but the average cert will cost maybe 1,000 to 1,500. Even after you get your cert, you still
Mhm.
have to audition with the studio, and every studio has their own process. And there are also other ways, though, I think, of having a career in a business through Lagree. And those are more entrepreneurial routes. But if you're just starting out, typically you would start with a studio to grow your base. And I also think it's really important to think about where you do want to grow your clientele, because not every studio is the same. Like, even in some places like Los Angeles, there are so many Lagree studios. I think the best ones are all known for different things or specific instructors. So I think everyone has a place to grow in Lagree, and you just kind of have to find your specific voice. It is such a niche community, but I think that's something I've loved about how niche it is. Like, it really attracts kind of these like very dedicated super fan individuals, and
Mhm.
I think that's like what everyone kind of looks for in fitness, but also like a career and community, is people who just show up and are willing to
Yeah.
challenge themselves. And that's why I personally love it. So I think like if that works for you, then, just like be prepared to experience like the highs and lows of teaching fitness classes. And, but I do find that it is really great when you come to it authentically.
You mentioned audition. What does that entail?
When I auditioned at this current studio I'm working at
Mhm.
in Eagle, Carve had me teach a private. So I taught Kristen, the studio owner, a 45-minute class. And
Mm.
so I was playing the music. She was doing the moves, and then I was like, running her through a typical routine. And then after that, she liked it. And from that point, we went straight into me substituting. So
Yeah.
I had substituted for some people in their evening classes. And typically, I think newer instructors start out at like lower volume times. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of helps both the studio and I think the instructor get a feel for like repeatedly doing classes because they'll be a bit smaller, but it's a good thing. It's not great to have like super full classes when you're a new instructor
Yeah.
because there's just so many variables
Mm-hmm.
that you don't really know about. Yeah, so that's what that's like.
That's really cool. You're actually I like how you said audition instead of an interview. That's the first time I've ever heard that. I mean, outside of acting. I think we've learned a lot today about Lagree, what it is, all the moves, the career, and tips. So I hope this inspires someone out there, and if not, creates a new appreciation for everything an instructor does, because it's like I said, it's not just about teaching, there's a lot more to it. And I do have a new appreciation for you, Jules, and how much work
Thanks,
you put
Bo.
into every class. So thank you for
I
sharing all of
appreciate
that.
it. Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm really stoked to be here, and this has been really fun. Thank you.
Yes. Actually, Jules, you have a podcast too. So can you share your podcast? What is it about? Where can people find it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my podcast is called The Pool Party, and you can actually see a lot of my graphic design work, which was my first career and something I still do as a freelancer. My website is juliaespero.me. It's JuliaEspero.me.
I'll also put it into this podcast as well. So
Great.
everyone can give you a follow. And you post a lot of content on your Instagram as well.
I do,
Right.
yes. It's Jules Motion underscore, and that is like all Lagree and all my
Love.
life in Boise, which is also a new chapter for me. So it's kind of fun to experience like moving through a city and then moving through my schedule as a Lagree instructor.
Yeah. Make sure to give her a follow and also subscribe to this channel as well, wherever you're listening from. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank
Thank
you.
you.